Good morning, everyone. Good and greetings on this beautiful Saturday morning. And my name is Bill Baroni, and I want to thank the organizers of this terrific panel and Jeff and the whole team who've put this conference together. And for a long time, I was known as 67325-050. Many of us on this call can remember those numbers drilled into us in so many ways. And that set of numbers, and I raised that on purpose because this panel is going to be just as we start this today. This panel is about out of isolation, and something that in the great video we just saw that every one of those stories had is what I like to call a moment. There's a moment where our lives fundamentally changed from what they were before, and there's a countless number of different ways that happened. And I'm very fortunate to have a terrific group of people with us this morning for panel number one to talk about that moment of exiting isolation, that moment where we went into this, where our lives changed, and how we begin to walk through it, how we begin to emerge from that. And as you can all tell by the program, that some of the people that are on this program, Elizabeth Kelley and Seth Williams and Erika Cheung, have extraordinarily gone through a lot and have helped a lot of others go through. And I want to just start right off. If I could, I'd like to start off with Erika. Erika, everyone can see Erika's biography. I'm not going to go through it, but Erika, you had an extraordinary moment where your whole life changed and you entered a period of difficult isolation. Could you talk about that with us? Could you talk about your journey through that isolation? And for folks that are on this who may not have gotten that 675 yet, we're just the beginning of this process. Tell us your story. Tell us your journey out of isolation.
Yeah, thanks, Bill, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for being on this call. I think one of the things talking to Jeff and talking to Drew and a few people who introduced me to this group is really talking about that how did I get here moment. And that is a very illuminating instance of remembering when, in my case, I was a whistleblower in a big fraud case. I had started off working 22 in a lab diagnostic firm where the technology we were leveraging was harming patients. And so I felt the need to report. But sort of surprisingly, I didn't realize how isolating the experience would be for me. And I remember coming out of the federal trial, and my life had been kind of in shambles. We were going through the justice process. This was supposed to be the right thing to do. In my mind, the only thing I wanted to do was really build medical devices and do right by patients. But now it seemed coming out of this, not only was my personal life destroyed, but also all these other people. And I didn't quite know what to do and felt very isolated, even in my own experience, sort of being involved in the trial in a different way. Started to think about, how can I come out of this? And for me, it was really thinking about how do I connect with other people to make sure these things don't happen again? How do I make sure that we can work together to prevent, these giant frauds from happening again? How can we support one another to ensure that, people's families are taken care of, and that when people are in these instances where they're up at night and like, what happened to my life? Like, what happened to all the things that I'd worked so hard, so much of my life to build are now all of a sudden gone? How do you make sure that you build allyship? Um, to be able to move past that. So that's kind of a little foundation of sort of my experience with isolation, kind of being involved in one of these cases, and really have done a lot of soul searching, working with different groups to figure out how do we ensure that we maintain that connection as human beings to ensure that we take care of one another, and don't have to go through these instances alone.
And push you on that, Erika, very briefly. You said, at one point you said your personal life was destroyed, and then you were talking about, connections with other human beings. How did you make that? You had that moment, and you started to realize you've got a process you're going to go through. You're
Right.
going to go through a formalized, legalistic process. For some of us, that's going through a trial. For some of us, that's pleading guilty and going to sentencing. For some of us, it's, participating in a federal trial as you did. We all, so we have that sort of process that we're going through. We've got lawyers or, U.S. attorneys or defense lawyers who are working with us. But, and you go to the office and you have these moments where you're going through documents or what have you, but then you leave the office and you go home, right? And the world that you had before is now fundamentally altered. And you're realizing that at some point that process, whether again it's a trial or what have you, is going to end, and you need to rebuild a life somehow because it's going to continue, right? What was the number one thing that you did to sort of guide yourself through not the process? You've got lawyers and assistants and all that, but as you said, your personal life, I think the word used was destroyed. Looking at that, your word destruction, how did you work your way through that to realize that there's going to be something after that?
Yeah, I think, throughout the process, I had no one. It was really just me. I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't have anyone sort of in my corner, with the exception of maybe my brother. So I think the big thing for me was just being vulnerable with people. Like, I am all alone. I'm all alone. I don't have anyone. I don't know what to do. And it was those candid conversations with the people that I felt I had some vestige of trust with to say, I need help. I need help. And that started with some of my close friendships of, I'm in my case, I was very paranoid. I was very distrustful. I felt very ashamed because, I had worked since I was 10 years old. I was homeschooled, helped take care of my family, worked really hard to like get out of the trailer park, started going to college at age 14. And all of a sudden, sending an email was difficult for me. That was crazy, right? Like I had worked easily 12-hour days, 14-hour days since as long as I could remember. That was never an issue for me. And now all of a sudden, writing an email was an issue. And that came with it a lot of shame. Um, and so it was just telling people, like, I don't know what happened, but I need that next step to get better. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get better. I need to see a psychologist. Great. Let's sign that up. We need to go and talk to a support group. I'm a part of a whistleblower support group, a peer-to-peer support group. I've reached out to several of them to just find camaraderie in other people who had been through this experience very similar to this group. To say, I feel that it's very hard for people to understand the journey that I'm going through. And so I just need someone else who has some understanding of what it's like to be involved in a case specifically where there's so much litigation involved. And it was those small phone calls, those small moments of just saying, you can't be embarrassed. You can't choose to just do it alone anymore. You really got to just reach out to those individuals to start making progress in your life and to get back on track. I was fortunate enough, I worked in the startup space. After that, I'd been a scientist at the beginning of my career, which was likely now hard to get back into. And then switched over to venture capital. So it was like calling up any connection I could to start rebuilding my career, to start rebuilding little connections here and there. And so it was that. It was not being embarrassed, not being too focused and myopic on the fact that I wasn't where I had anticipated I wanted to be, and to just say, okay, we're here. We've hit our version of it was my version of rock bottom. And how was I gonna move forward? And how was I gonna do better by the people around me and do better coming out of this circumstance? And it really took just those little calls, those little moments of asking for help and that peer-to-peer support. I imagine it's not as different as kind of the group here today, of just having other people who had been through the experience, was really crucial.
And Erika, you used a phrase, I think you said, I'm all alone. And I look at my friend Seth Williams, who, like me, was a public official and had been in elected office, and was the first African American district attorney in the city of Philadelphia. High profile, goes on trial. And again, without going through the whole case, there was a moment where after Seth had pled guilty in the middle of the trial, The judge, shockingly to everyone, remanded him immediately in the middle of the list of remand. There was no reason. No one thought that Seth Williams, who everybody in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, everybody knew, he walked into a Wawa, everyone would know it, or Sheets for those of you who are not from Eastern Pennsylvania. Um, but yet the judge sent him away immediately. Seth, let me ask you a question. Erika just talked about she felt all alone. There
Yeah.
was a moment when you were taken out of that courtroom, taken downstairs. You must have felt very alone. How did you handle that moment? You've been through years of this process. Had gone from being someone surrounded by people 24/7, literally, to this moment. How did you begin at that moment, sitting on that iron bench somewhere in a courthouse in Philadelphia? How did you go? How did you begin this process? How did you take that literal, physical, actual isolation and move from there?
Yeah, and good morning, Bill, and good morning, everyone. I'm very thankful to be here. And yeah, the struggle of going from isolation into community is just so powerful and needed. And that's why this video that we just saw was so helpful, I think, in thinking back to it. But me personally, being isolated, being in isolation, either metaphorically or literally, really affected me in four phases of my life. The first was just as the elected official. I didn't think I could talk to anybody about what I was experiencing, what I was going through, um, all the struggles and the challenges of that. And then you specifically then moved me directly to when I became 759-26066 on June the 29th of 2017. When I first was under investigation, I didn't know why were they investigating me. I hadn't done anything. I had no criminal intent for anything. I just didn't understand what's going on. I couldn't talk to anybody. And that began me trying to numb myself even more with more martinis or Jack Daniels and continuing a spiral of a maladaptive schema. But I went on trial because the charges against me were BS. I should have reported gifts. I later negotiated with the city to do that. The Obama administration have said if I did that and I announced I wasn't going to run for re-election, they wouldn't charge me. Well, he went out of office in January of 2017. The new guy came in. Before there was a new attorney general, a new U.S. attorney, the career FBI investigator and U.S. attorneys, they've been running my case, put me before the grand jury. I got indicted in March. Speedy trial. I went on trial in June of 2017. We had a great first week and a half. We had a bad day. The feds offered my attorneys for me to plead guilty to one charge against my better judgment. We didn't even really want to do that, but they told me I could remain on bail. I could get my affairs in order, take my daughters to therapy, sell my house, have sentencing maybe 4 months later, and then maybe 3 months after that, self-surrender somewhere. So I entered the plea, like you said, and immediately the judge had my bail revoked. I was handcuffed in court, taken underground to the federal detention center, strip search, given an orange jumpsuit, blue skippers, and put into my own cell for solitary confinement, where I remained for 152 days, 5 months. So going from just being driven to court that day by my security detail, and then now finding myself, I just thought this has to be, where's Alan Funt? This is like candid camera. This cannot be happening. This makes no sense to me. It's just like my whole world dropped out. I lost everything. I lost, Erika explained losing, but I lost everything. My reputation, my elected office, my city pension, my military career. I've been a JAG officer in the Army for 19 years. I lost that pension. I lost my house, my law license, time with family. I lost everything. And so I was sitting there in solitary confinement, the literal isolation, just spinning out of control, and just didn't know what to do, didn't know what to expect. And that's how I found myself on June the 29th of 2017.
So it's June 30, 2017. You don't know how long you're going to be there. How did you begin looking for that route? How did you begin to look for that realizing you're literally isolated. You don't know how long you're going to be isolated. I think everyone on this call has that, you have that moment where you realize you're in isolation. For you, that isolation was literal and metaphorical. So it's now the morning after, right? I hate to sound like that song, but it's the morning after. How'd you begin this process? If you didn't have access to Jeff and the team's white collar support group as you were sitting there in Philadelphia, locked up, how did you begin to do it? How did you mentally begin to do it?
Well, again, the greatest fear, as others have mentioned, was the fear of the unknown. And I wish I had known about the white collar support group while I was under investigation. I could have spoken with people, but I didn't have that opportunity, like you said. I was in solitary confinement 23 hours a day. 1 hour, Monday through Friday, I was allowed to go to rec. That's where they would come to my cell, open the wicket, it's a little door, handcuff me, and take me to my own little SPCA type dog kennel cage on the roof. And it was during that 1 hour I could interact with other humans, other people that were there. My best friends were guys that were paid hitmen or serial killers that the feds were prosecuting. And so it was during that hour, or speaking through the vent between my bathroom and the cell next to me, that I would sometimes talk to folks and ask them, what could I expect? What was going on? What was life in federal prison going to be like? And they would tell me. I'm glad I was able to come out of isolation in that way so that I could prepare for, I was flown on Con Air, which I thought was just a crazy movie with, Nicolas Cage, but I was actually on the U.S. Marshal's plane, handcuffed with leg irons, chained to the guy next to me who had tattoos on his head that said KKK type stuff. So I was able to come out of isolation slowly by trying to talk to other people that had gone through similar things. Most importantly, when I finally got to West Virginia, I was in RDAP, the Residential Drug Abuse Program. I never considered myself an alcoholic, but I found myself in a program with guys that were from Appalachia, that were meth addicts, that were there for selling meth. And I came out of the isolation there. That's when I had my aha moment, because there was no way I really could see myself having a similar experience as these meth addicts who had lost their teeth, or people had shot up heroin between their toes. How they chose to numb themselves was different than right? I used martinis and Jack Daniels. But once I understood that the underlying feelings that we all had were universal, then I was able to come out of my own isolation and start to understand how we're all connected. And I was able to learn from these other people, from their own experience of losing everything, of how I could learn from them and try to grow. But for me, on a very personal, spiritual level, I had to learn when I lost everything, when I had nothing, right? When God was all I had, I learned that God was all I needed. And coming to that understanding really allowed me just to rebuild and to reconnect with people on a different level and to move forward. And so now that's what I try to do professionally, as I have second chance strategies, and I try to connect and help returning citizens reconnect and to rebuild their lives.
Seth, I appreciate that. One of the things that, you mentioned is sort of the universality of what we've all been going through.
Right.
And, we're very fortunate on our panel to be joined by Elizabeth Kelley. Elizabeth, who is a defense attorney, and you could see in her biography, has been dealing with people who, have been on all parts of this journey. And Elizabeth, if I could just ask you, you've just heard two different, very different factually, very different. One of my friends, Seth, spent some time away. Erika did not. I did. Others on this call have, or maybe about to. So every one of your clients, I would imagine, over the time that you've been working as a leader in the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, representing your own clients, every one of us has that moment. I can remember in my own story, one of my early, I had a cast of thousands of lawyers in my case, but One of them said, "I can't be your therapist and your lawyer." That was very sage advice. The problem with that is, then therefore, what do I do now? So, Elizabeth,
Right.
you have that moment when you have a client like me, like Seth, like anyone on this call, who you are our lawyer, you are our, as I was talking about before, the process part of our life, the process of dealing with motions and judges and potentially juries. When one of us comes to you and says, "Help me," help me, I don't know what to do, help me. How do you begin to have that conversation knowing that they are isolated, maybe isolated from everyone in their life, as Erika was talking about? Maybe it's their family who has left them. Maybe it's someone like Seth, who family hadn't left him, who still had a great support network in the community, who now is sitting for 150 something days in actual isolation. What do you tell that person, Elizabeth?
Well, good morning, Bill. And I want to join the chorus of people praising Jeff Grant and his entire team for putting together this wonderfully successful inaugural event. In all honesty, Bill, I don't think any of my clients have ever come to me and said, "I need help." Rather, the burden is on me to tell them that, and to tell them that in a way that is done with care, and also is wrapped around the fact that ultimately this is going to help you help me. The attorney who said to you, "I am your attorney, not your therapist," was spot on. We as lawyers are not trained to be psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, any kind of mental health expert. We need and we must stay in our lane. That being said, during the video, I was so struck by all the adjectives that the interviewees mentioned about how they felt during the process: fear, isolation, hopeless, depressed. All of those are real, and sometimes they can almost be paralyzing and debilitating. For those in the virtual audience who are still going through the journey of investigation and prosecution, I want to emphasize to you that you do need to reach out for help, not only for your own welfare, but it will empower and enable your lawyer to best help you. And a step beyond that is your family as well needs to reach out for help. If you, as the person under investigation, if you as the person being prosecuted, if you as the person who is incarcerated feel isolated, so too does your family.
Mm-hmm. In some ways, I think it's even harder on our families because they don't have those conversations with lawyers and things. Yeah, I thought it was something very in the section before us. David made a point about what helped him was family, health, and close friends, and relying on those three huge areas. And so Elizabeth, help me with this. You think defense attorneys and lawyers in this process should be saying to their clients, I agree with you completely, to seek help. You say, "You are my lawyer in our hypothetical case." What's the first thing you say to me?
Well, the first thing is for the attorney to acknowledge the fact that most white-collar defendants face a unique set of challenges in terms of acknowledging their mental issues. the stereotype out there is that only other people have mental issues. And in fact, we know that mental issues cut across every professional background, educational background, economic status, every community. But the challenges faced by people within those different groups are unique and need to be recognized and acknowledged by the family. But you can't just tell your client in a crass sort of way, now, you've got a lot going on. You need to see a therapist. It needs to be done in a very respectful way. Attorneys always need to be mindful of the fact, I think, that everyone going through the process doesn't just feel isolated, they feel violated. Their dignity has been lost, their privacy has been lost. All of a sudden, they are having their records gone through. Every aspect of their life is being turned over. Everything they have done is being folded, spindled, and mutilated into something that can and will be used against them. So all of that should be recognized. Beyond that, Seth talked about the fact that his charges were BS. He was going to go to trial. He was going to fight this. Dave Israel also told us that he felt that the charges against him were baseless. And they might very well have been. But at some point in the process, the accused needs to recognize the perverse. That is to say, they are approaching the criminal justice system as rational, logical human beings. Many of them are successful business people. They know how to make decisions. They know how to solve complex problems. And the entire case against them seems counterintuitive. And at some point, I don't want to say you have to surrender, but you need to understand that you are now in a very, very upside down universe.
Very true.
Elizabeth, thank you for that. And it's something that you mentioned. Erika, I'd like your quick take on this. When you had that moment when you meet with the government for the first time and you realize that, as the poem once said, all's changed utterly. How did you begin that process? What was the advice? Who gave you that advice? What was the best advice you got for beginning this journey to get out of this isolation?
For the best advice to get out of the isolation, I think, I mean, I don't know if anyone gave me too much guidance or too much advice through that. I think it was more intuitively driven of more like, this is where we are and we have to accept the reality of the circumstance and the situation that we're in. And where do you want to go from here, given what you have in your control? And it was realizing, how do I break down every decision to what can I do to just make tomorrow a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And then from there it compounds, and from there you can get more ambitious with the goals and the insight. And I think that for me, that process of what one small thing can I do tomorrow that's going to make it a little bit better and that I feasibly can move. And that's kind of what I was alluding to. That one phone call, that
Erika,
one
I think,
moment to
sorry,
journal. Yeah, that one moment to journal, like whatever those methods of helping or there. I'm a big kickboxer. Exercise was a big thing for me. So doing martial arts and just saying like, okay, you're going to just focus on this. Maybe that's all you do is just get better at this sport.
Erika, you raised a good point. When I was beginning my journey, I ended up sitting. I see Father Joe on the call, who's coming up with the next panel. But I remember sitting with a priest here at my parish, Mark David Janis, who before he was a priest and continued to be was a psychologist, and he was the psychologist at the University of Michigan Children's Hospital, and he would say to me, this is days after my case blew up, and I said to him, I said, Father, when is this going to be over? When help me with this? I was truly desperate at that point. I think that was my moment of true isolation. What do I do? And I couldn't talk to anybody, and the press was outside the house, and what do I do? And Father Janis said, that's the wrong question. It's not, he said, look, when I was working at the hospital at the University of Michigan, and parents would come and say, little Billy's been in a terrible accident or is very, very sick. When is little Billy going to be better? And Father Janis said, it's not a question of when it's going to be better. The question is little Billy a little better today than he was yesterday? And is he a little better the next day? And he's a little better the next day. And he's a little better the next day. That stuck with me. And, Seth, you had that moment. You were a lawyer. You spent 25 years practicing law, both for the government as a JAG officer and also for the government as a district attorney, but also representing private folks. You were on both sides of that conversation. Mm-hmm. The moment of your client, your friend, your loved one, your neighbor, who's now one of us either have or soon to have a number to their name forever.
Right.
What do you say to that? What is your moment? What do you give? What's the advice that you gave yourself sitting in that isolation cell? And I saw Cindy put into the chat, and please, everyone, as we're going forward, put your commentary, put your commentary into the chat, where certainly the panel is looking at it. Cindy said your case was infuriating, Seth. And I think a lot of us who know you and have heard about your case, and I remember reading about your case even before, obviously, you and I ever met. And it is infuriating. How did you deal with that? What was your first step? When Father Janis tells me at one step, when Erika went kickboxing first, and Erika, and I can tell you on behalf of the hundreds and hundreds of people on this call, none of us want to meet you in a kickboxing studio. and Seth, what was that moment? What did you tell yourself?
So again, I think Elizabeth made a great point. I had been an attorney for 25 years. I had been a prosecutor and assistant DA for 10 and a half years. I've been a criminal defense attorney. I've been an Army JAG officer where I did both. I've been the elected district attorney. But once I found myself under investigation, it made no sense to me. And I didn't know who to talk to. And what's interesting and why this white collar support group is so powerful and important, I'm thankful for Jeff and Lynn for founding it, is because people I was in prison with that were drug dealers, their group, their friends, their social network embraced them and supported them and their family while they were away. Us white collar folks, our friends give us the Heisman. Everyone treats us like we're radioactive, right? Our friends, when our wives take the kids to the country club, nobody wants to sit next to them, or they move away from it at the synagogue, right? So my aha moment, again, I didn't have the ability to do this group before I went away, but I was fortunate. A friend sent me the book by Chuck Colson, Born Again. And I read that in isolation. And what really hit me the most was on page 306. I can quote it like scripture and verse from the Bible. But what Chuck Colson said was he had to, like Elizabeth said, I had just to surrender. None of this made sense, but I'm here because maybe this is part of God's plan for me to strip away all of the phony people, all of the politician folks that smile at my face. I have to lose all that stuff to become who God really wants me to become.
So Seth, let me ask you a question, and we're getting towards the end of our panel here. In just 2 or 3 words, you are Joe Smith or Mary Jones, and you've gotten to know Jeff, and you've gotten to know the White Collar Support Group. You've been coming to these panel calls on Monday. And you're feeling isolated today, and you hear all these folks, you hear that Baroni fellow, and you hear that Grant fellow, and you hear that Stanlin fellow, and yeah, they got through it, but my case is different. I'm different. I'm not going to be able to make it through. Yeah, all these people on the call, but I'm different. people will say to themselves. What do you tell them this morning at 10 o'clock on the East Coast in 2 or 3 words? Isolation is surrounding them their whole life, their physical, their family, their friends. And all of us that have gone through it say, no, you can get through it. And they're still a little doubtful, even after what we've talked about. In 2 or 3 words, I'm going to look to Erika and I'm going to look to Elizabeth as well. In 2 or 3 words, what are you saying to them this morning?
That we're not unique.
Okay, that's 4 words, Seth. This is the reason why you got into trouble. It's 2 or 3 words, Seth. No, seriously, go ahead. We are not unique. Tell me more about that.
I thought I was unique. I thought no one understood me. I didn't think anybody could understand my troubles and my problems. And that, yeah, I got a 60-month sentence and a 5 months. Let me get rid of all that. Just like I had to learn an RDAP. I didn't understand why that guy was using meth or heroin. But once I got beyond how they chose to numb themselves, I found that we were universal in our feelings. So when I call in on Mondays, and yeah, most of the people didn't have isolation like me. They weren't on Con Air. They weren't given 60-month sentences. But the feelings of losing our family, or people giving us the Heisman, and in reentry, me having to work at Lowe's when I have the governor's number on my speed dial, but nobody will give me a job. So I have to work at Lowe's unloading trucks. Listening to, Craig, or listening to, Father on here on Mondays, and other people help me.
Erika?
I think the connection is key.
I think that's right. Connection is key. Elizabeth?
I heard the swimmer Diana Nyad speak a few weeks ago. And if anyone doesn't know who she is, look her up. But she spoke at a seminar on healing. And at the very end, she concluded with the following: the best way to heal is to be a badass. And I think that's a very empowering message. Yes, connect with support groups. Yes, mobilize your family. Yes, have the hope and the conviction that you are going to get through this. But at the same time, don't lay down, fight back, be a badass in whichever way is most empowering for you.
That's good advice.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Erika. And thanks everyone for listening to our panel. Very, very fortunate to work with these 3 extraordinary people. And it is very helpful. And thank you all very much for joining us so early this morning. And now I'm going to turn over to, as we continue towards the next panel, Craig, on behalf of the 4 of us in panel number 1, we turn it back to you.